Welcome back to the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BOL, alongside Bama Online team expert Jimmy Stein. We've got Tim Watts joining us here momentarily. Of course, our site publisher there at BOL. Coming up a little bit later in the program, Andrew Bone will check in as we go full on recruiting. But Jimmy, we'll get things going. We got some team stuff we want to talk about during the early portion of this Monday program. And we'll get into some NFL draft, obviously. Alabama's presence still very strong. I guess you could literally say from start to literally finish of the 2024 NFL draft, there was the Crimson Tide once again, 3 more first-round picks, double digits once again for the Crimson Tide in an NFL draft. But I also wanted to hit on a big weekend on the Diamonds. I mean, we're at a point in the baseball and softball seasons too, Jimmy, where you got to really start taking care of some business. And coming out of this most recent weekend, there is Alabama baseball after a series win on the road. 3 important words, I think, there, Jimmy, to go along with Alabama softball salvaging one game against that really good Tennessee team, despite scoring just 1 run in 3 games. I think that was about the best case scenario given the run output. Just those things as we get started here, Jimmy, with the baseball and softball.
Yeah, I don't really find that the teams are similar, yet they're in similar spots. And by that, I mean Alabama baseball still with 3 series to go. They have a chance to play themselves in a position to host a regional. I think making the NCAA tournament, far from a foregone conclusion, but they're in good shape to make the NCAA tournament. But these last 3 series will be about, can you win enough games to not only be invited, but to host a regional? I think that's possible. It's just going to take some winning. Softball, weirdly, they have an RPI, which screams they'll definitely host a regional. But then you watch them play and you see the numbers, and there hasn't been a good SEC record. I think hosting a regional, which has been a given for Alabama softball for a long time, I think that's in doubt, but it could still be done. They're going to have to win the series at Auburn next weekend and have a good showing in the SEC tournament to do it. But the RPI is sporty and was helped despite scoring 1 run against Tennessee in a 3-game series. Your RPI has probably helped. I mean, Tennessee has got a sparkling RPI themselves. And I'll tell you what, I saw a couple of those games in person. Tennessee is one of the better softball teams I've seen in person. They're very good. They check every box. They can hit it, they can defend, and they can certainly pitch.
I don't know what the rest of the league looks like in the circle. I typically understand that it's very good at that level of softball where the pitching position is concerned. But, we talk about Alabama at 9-12 in the league. I sort of shudder to think what that might look like if Kayla Beaver wasn't pitching for this Alabama team. I don't know if she'll be all SEC or all American or those things, but especially after the performance to salvage that win over Tennessee in that 3-game series, she's been tremendous.
She has a shutout now, Travis. This is really impressive stuff. She complete game shutout against Tennessee, who's probably the best team in the SEC and may win the national championship. She also has a complete game shutout against Florida, which has by far the best offense in the SEC. So her 2 complete game shutouts have been sparkling, to say the least. She is dominant. It will be interesting to see at end of season when it's all said and done, how her numbers stack up against Fouts' seasons at Alabama, because she's pitching at that level. And Jocelyn Brisky's looked pretty good too, the freshman. She's especially lately as the season progressed. So the pitching's fine. The hitting is just terrible. I mean, we need to. It's bad. Yeah. And now it bottomed out against Tennessee. Now a lot of teams struggle. Alabama's not the only team that's only scored 1 run against Tennessee in a 3-game series. That's just, they're the exception to the rule. But Alabama needs to find some offense. Maybe can start in Auburn. The baseball team, opposite problem. Their pitching is a little questionable at times, particularly once you get into the bullpen. But they hit the ball extremely well. I think they're 3rd in the league in runs scored. Being third, having the 3rd best offense in SEC baseball is saying a lot.
Needed another series win, especially on the road. Rob Vaughn's team gets that in Oxford. Now you stay over in the Magnolia, if in the Magnolia State. If you've ever been to Starkville, if you've ever been to Duty Noble, whether it's the old park or the new one, that is some type of different. That's Omaha South, I think. I know Hoover for the SEC tournament has that feel as well, but especially when you consider the on-campus environment and everything that goes into that, another big series coming up on the road for Alabama baseball.
Yeah, Mississippi State's really unique. I mean, you can argue that, who's the best program in the SEC. The league is so strong. You can make the case for several, but I'll say this all the time about Mississippi State. I'm pretty sure that's the only school in the league where the baseball players are sort of the stars of campus. I mean, at Alabama, we all know it's football and basketball is getting there, and it's football at most schools, and at Kentucky, it's basketball. But at Mississippi State, the baseball players, they're the for lack of a better word, they're the cool kids on campus. Everyone knows who they are. They're superstars, and that all starts with the atmosphere and environment for their home games. It's unlike anything else in the league. And boy, Mississippi State's pretty good. Ole Miss has struggled. Mississippi State is not. They're playing really well, especially as the season has progressed. That's going to be a big challenge for Alabama baseball. As good as Alabama is playing, I think this weekend the challenge in my mind is to find one win. I mean, that's going to be tough just to find the one win. Winning the series, it would be absolutely insanely great. And they could. But Mississippi State, in my mind, a bigger challenge than even playing Ole Miss at their place.
Yeah, I think Mississippi State coming off a series win over Vanderbilt. And one of those teams that typically it's alarming if you're struggling in your non-con, especially against pretty average to below average competition. And even for a coach like Chris Lemonis, just a couple of years removed from a national championship at State, you were starting to hear some rumblings because it was a disappointing season a year ago for the Bullies, but looked to be rebounding here in conference play. So absolutely a big weekend coming up in Stark Vegas. Hey, we've got Tim Watts with us now. Let's throw him into the mix. There he is, our guy.
Hey,
Tim Watts.
What's
Tim,
up?
how you doing on this Monday? Did the laptop have a case of the Mondays?
Freaking ridiculous. Just going to update on its own. Yes, 8
They'll
minutes.
do that sometimes, Those laptops can be
literally
like kids.
just blacked out 3 minutes before the show, but
It wasn't.
Y'all got
it
some
wasn't
one-on-one time
and program.
Y'all got some quality time, so that was good.
Yeah, we got
me
some
in here.
baseball and some softball talk after a big weekend of SEC action. And, what we were obviously going to talk about with you as well, in addition to some Alabama basketball coming up here in just a little bit. But the Alabama football program, once again, very prominent in an NFL draft. Talked about this with Jimmy, Tim. Literally from start to the last pick, Alabama had a place in this draft. And just kind of your thoughts on how it played out. We had talked for the last couple of months about that over-under for first-round picks. We set it at 3.5. Felt good about the over going into it. But it is Kool-Aid McKinstry who slides into the second round. And your New Orleans Saints, Tim, trade up to get Kool-Aid there early in the second.
Yeah, selfishly, I'll take it. I mean, I think that Kool-Aid's a first-round cornerback. I think we knew that he could slide into that early part of the second round. He actually fell into that area we talked about. And with the way that draft went, I mean, there's 4 or 5 guys that were not, I don't think they were normally a first-round pick. I mean, nobody had Bo Nix with the first-round grade, really. Michael Penix with the first-round grade, Ricky Pearsall, some of those guys, not saying they're not good, but I think they were all like on the border. But what you've seen, because the quarterbacks are so insane now, there is nothing but first rounders and late rounders. There's no more middle round quarterbacks. Anybody in that second and third round, you got to run up there and get them and pretend you tricked other teams like Sean Payton did. Oh, we baited them into, no, you got the last one. You got the 6th of the 6th. But you had guys that now they're rushing up there to get as fast as they can. And it's just changed the dynamics. I mean, you saw the defensive guys, the value. In my opinion, a lot of those top 10 teams, we're going to be discussing them picking in the top 10 in the next couple of years as well. Because when you looked at the draft and you started seeing the best offensive lineman. Now Latham went, which I thought was a brave pick by the Titans not to go offensive guy. I actually thought maybe Brock Bowers could fall in there just as
Chargers
as a
did it too, right? Yeah, both of those teams.
Yeah, so when you still had guys that like the guy that went in the 11th, the Penn State guy, the Washington guy that was going in those second 10, you're usually not going to find those guys. So pushing everything back a little bit, all the wide receivers that went, it's a great spot for Kool-Aid. I think that he's going to come in and have a chance to play. I think, look, when Nick Saban, who I mean, A plus 6-star performance by Nick Saban, like I would not discuss football in public with Nick Saban. I would not. I would discuss it in private so I could absorb and learn. But he make it just his casual drops make you look dumb. I
But
mean, he was so good with it.
Tim, he told on Alabama when it came to Quinyon Mitchell. He told
Yeah,
on him.
yeah, but I will say he said Kool-Aid's the one most ready to play in that draft for the defensive back position. I thought that was a loud and bold statement to hear that. And I don't think he was mincing words. I think he was very honest and direct. So obviously for Kool-Aid, I think it was good. And as a Saints fan, I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I think that's what we had talked about with Kool-Aid throughout the process. If you wanted to talk about the highest floor, especially relative to, say, Terrion Arnold, then Kool-Aid was your guy. If you were thinking maybe highest, biggest ceiling, then Terrion would probably be your choice. And so, Jimmy, 3 first-round picks for the Alabama Crimson Tide. It was intriguing because we were thinking that probably Dallas Turner would be the first Alabama player off the board. Instead, as Tim outlined, it was J.C. Latham to the hated Tennessee Titans, especially if you're a Jaguars fan like myself. But J.C. goes top 10, and then there's a wait for Dallas. And all of this is we relate it to, say, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Dallas Turner, just that tidal wave of offensive players in the first half of the first round. As Tim talked about, 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks, wide receivers. You just wondered when the start of the defensive run was going to get underway, and it really did once Minnesota traded up to 17 with Jacksonville.
Really all draft arguments and philosophies come down to need versus best available player. But the fact is, in the first round, virtually everyone drafts based on need. What do they need to address? Where do they need an immediate starter when you have your choice of the board? So what happens is Mel Kiper and those guys can line up their big boards. Hey, here's the 30 best players, and in the order I think they are. But they're never drafted in that order because people are drafting based on need, and everyone needs offense. Sells tickets, creates excitement. The fans always, hey, all the proof is watch A-Day. When the offense does something well, people clap. People rarely clap for the defense, or when the offense does something bad, they boo. But fans are watching the offense. They draft on offense. And I think it's even more overstated these days, like Tim pointed out with the quarterbacks. They don't wait. Now third-round quarterbacks are taken in the first round all the time because they want to address that position. So that's why Dallas Turner's not the 17th best prospect in this draft. He was just drafted at 17. And I think he's in a good spot, frankly. That's a good place. When you're drafted by these better teams, you're in a better situation to stand out. You're in a better situation to have success when you're surrounded by good players, which helps you get to the all-important second contract, which can be a heck of a lot bigger than your first contract, even for the first-round guys. So Dallas landed in a great spot. I'm not sure that Latham went to a place that I think is going to be doing some rebuilding, but Dallas Turner and the Vikings can win right away, even with a rookie quarterback.
And Tim,
We say, Travis, we say that like they draft off needs, but that thing got off the rails the minute the Falcons took Penix. It got off the rails. Everybody was scrambling. Yeah. The Vikings were moving up because, hey, we had J.J. McCarthy at 4, which was I'm still shocked where he went. But they had J.J. McCarthy going at 4, all these trades. They end up moving up to get him. Then you get a team that just took a second-round tight end with the Raiders taking Brock Bowers. Nothing against Brock Bowers. He's an elite tight end. The Saints would have been fortunate to have him. Most teams would, but they go and take him at 13. Raider fans are mad. You got Denver taking a quarterback, moving up and getting a guy that everybody had probably in the second round. So when you get through those 3 or 4 guys getting off the rail, that's kind of the 3 or 4 spots that cause, a Dallas, because Dallas definitely, he's you can argue the UCLA defensive end was really good. Dallas was really good. There's a lot of things to like about him. But when that draft got pushed back with the offense, wide receivers that were projected bottom half of the first were now in the front half of the first. It got It's almost like we're playing fantasy football now.
Yeah,
Except when you lose, you get fired.
even the Jags, who had a need at corner and or slot corner, traded back to 23 and still took a wide receiver. I mean, and I get it. Brian Thomas Jr., I think that's a pretty good pick in that spot for them for what they need. They're all in on Trevor. Trevor has to be the guy for them. And this is his window. And so they're trying to get him everything he needs to be that guy. But, they didn't even go defense there. So that plays into it too.
If you play fantasy, if you've ever been in a fantasy draft, this is human nature, a fantasy draft for football. The first jackass that takes a kicker starts the run of kickers every single time. So when you're in the, and I know that,
just at me, Tim. Just at me. All right.
Travis does it in the first round, which kind of Travis is the Falcons. He's taking his Penix with his 8th pick, which is a kicker. But it starts that run, and I think the quarterback run happened. The wide receiver run happened because you want to get your guy. Now, Brian Thomas, to me, any other year is a top 3 wide receiver. Any other year, Brian Thomas is a top 3 wide receiver. I thought
that was good value at 23.
It's fantastic value. I thought Burton, I'm surprised Burton made it as long. I actually thought Burton was going to sneak up into the second round, kind of like Mitchell did. He had some things that fell. He fell in the second, the kid from Texas. But, overall, the draft, Bama did really well. Saban did really well. The Washington guys did really well. So the draft overall was really, really well.
We talked about it, and kind of it was a combo draft for Alabama because you had DeBoer and Washington on the other side of that, sort of melding together with this Alabama draft class. And from that perspective, I'd say that went really well. Hey, Jimmy, I wanted to ask you about some of those fits. I think Tim touched on it too. Guys that for Alabama ended up maybe not so much the round that they ultimately would have liked to have gone, but the situation that they're walking into. And I think about Terrion Arnold at the 24th pick in the first round with the Detroit Lions, a team that is ready to win a championship in a lot of ways, it seems. Even Chris Braswell in the second round to a Tampa Bay Buccaneer team that surprised a lot of folks last year. Tim said it with Jermaine Burton to the Cincinnati Bengals. You talk about walking into a great spot. T. Higgins has requested a trade. Jamar Chase is there. Joe Burrow, if you can keep him healthy, that's a great situation. Justin Aboigbe in the 4th round going to the Los Angeles Chargers. Refresh situation there. You got a quarterback that you can win with. Trying to put together some other pieces. You got Bosa at the 1-end spot. So that seems like a good spot for Justin Aboigbe. Jace McClellan in the 6th round of the Atlanta Falcons. Will Reichard in the 6th to an indoor NFC North team as a kicker in the Minnesota Vikings. And then Mr. Irrelevant, Jalen Key, the safety, going to the New York Jets with the final pick of the draft. Hey, that worked out pretty well for Brock Purdy a couple of years ago, didn't it, Jimmy?
I don't think Brock Purdy's irrelevant now. The quarterback of a team probably is going to be, a favorite to reach a Super Bowl again. Riker drafted by a team that needs a kicker. There's only 2 kickers on that Vikings roster, including Riker, and neither one of them have kicked in an NFL game. Riker was obviously drafted to be the kicker for Minnesota, and that's a great situation again for him because there's only 32 of those jobs, and a lot of those 32 find out on Monday mornings that they don't have jobs anymore. That's the NFL not for long specifically relates to the kicker spot. So, but Reichard is going to a place where he can be the dude right away. That's really cool. Jace McClellan to the Falcons, interesting. Obviously, they have a starting running back in Bijan Robinson who's going to soak up a lot of oxygen in that room, but everybody needs more than one. And Jace is a specialty guy. He's kind of a third down guy. He can catch the ball really well. He can also be an impactful special teams player. So Jace actually is a 6th round pick, not in a bad spot. DeMarco Hellams made the Falcons last year as a 7th round pick. So I think Jace ended up in a good spot too. Most of these Alabama guys did. Obviously, the guys drafted early were drafted to be starters. And how about the Lions drafting Terrion Arnold? And then they also take Ennis Rakestraw a little later as a cornerback also, showing the Lions are really building that secondary. They want a slightly different looking secondary. I've read some pieces from Detroit writers who say that Brian Branch is eventually going to be moved from nickel corner to a safety spot as part of their building process in the Detroit secondary.
Yeah, Rakestraw, I believe, at one point was an Alabama commitment,
I
Tim,
believe so.
He
before
was
landing with Missouri.
he was the one that until the morning of signing day, we thought Alabama was going to get. Carl Scott recruited him. He had a connection to, I think his former coach was on the Missouri staff. Didn't know if he could play at Alabama, not talent wise, but a logjam. You saw a lot of names, Javon Baker. You saw former guys linked to Bama all over that draft. I mean, you saw a lot of those guys. When it comes down to Jace, though, I think that you couldn't ask for about, he's not going to be stuck in there. He's going to be cheap. He's not going to be asked to do a whole lot, but he is a banger. If he's healthy, he can come along slow behind Robinson. And as you know, I mean, we've seen the NFL is peppered with guys in the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth round at running back. It's peppered with them because the first round guys, I did a deep dive before looking at the highly ranked guys. I mean, that's a flame out position. I mean, you remember Leonard Fournette was a top 5 pick,
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley. It's not just a flame out, but it's also injury and the beat down that goes with being running back. And that's what made a guy like Adrian Peterson, so special. But he was a freak of nature. You know what I mean? If he was a UFC fighter, he'd be fighting at 48. But more like a guy like Emmitt Smith, maybe.
Yeah.
That's what makes their career so special.
Yeah, I like Jace as a compliment to Robinson potentially because, as Jimmy said, I think the gear is there that you would like in that complimentary back if it plays out that way. And also, to echo Jimmy, Jace played a good bit of special teams his first couple of years at Alabama. So it's not something that's foreign to him. There's a lot of running backs, though, that go into the league. I was told about an AFC draftee a couple of years ago and from an SEC program, not Alabama. And he gets to the team, and the special teams coach comes up to him and says, "Hey, you ready to really help us out on special teams?" And the guy laughed, like, "You're kidding, right?" Well, that guy hadn't played special teams, so it didn't resonate with him whatsoever. That won't be an issue for Jace McClellan. Hey guys, we need to talk about, I think, some hoop scenarios at this point that are still in play for Nate Oates' program. Some big ones still to be determined. Of course, the big news from over the weekend, LeBaron Philon, fresh from his release of a national letter of intent from the University of Kansas, is headed to Tuscaloosa, going to play for the Crimson Tide in the 2024-2025 season. Tim, still trying to fill in some big blanks, though, when it comes to this team. And boy, the excitement surrounding the potential of those scenarios looking ahead.
Yeah, I think after the Final Four, we kind of looked at, we knew who was going in the portal. There hasn't really been a surprise for the staff that's went in the portal. I know that a lot of the fans keep thinking everybody, you know, goes in the portal looking for more NIL, but a lot of guys are literally looking for a better place to play and a place they can fit. It's going to be a pretty loaded roster coming up. Ryland was the one guy. It was kind of like if he stayed, I think it would have been okay, but they understood and kind of agreed it was better for a mutual, a different, and the funny thing about Ryland is we heard Kansas in the middle of the year. We heard that he could go to Kansas middle of the year, and that actually happened. So, I mean, we wanted you looked at the check marks. Lead guard is, one of Nate Oates wanted that, and he wanted a big man. Well, he's got two facilitators. He's got Aiden Holloway and LeBaron Philon. Both are, I think LeBaron's top 35 in the country. Aiden was top 20 in the country. Didn't have a great year at Auburn. That's been documented, but a different system, a different feel, a different vibe. Live and learn. You got to think he's got a chance because he was a priority for Nate Oates. He was a priority when he hit the portal. So they're still trying to figure this big man out. I mean, they've got Cliff. He's supposed to be on campus today. That's a guy they're obviously looking at. They've got, you got Grant Nelson still waiting to hear if Grant announces. So there's a lot in play, even though you're kind of checking boxes. Okay, guards are good. So guards, you're down to Mark Sears. That's it. What is Mark Sears going to do? Stay in the draft? Which combines he getting invited to, the first or the second, and all that stuff, how that plays out. But even if Mark leaves, as talented as he is, you feel better about the roster now than you did after Final Four and Mark left. Because now you got two guys that can play young, but very talented. So the big guy situation is where we're at now. The big guy, Travis, you can say his name, Aguna Kingsley,
Cliff.
maybe.
Oh,
No,
I was thinking.
well, we had a few of our basketball guys mentioned him as a possibility for Alabama right now, but I think it's
I
going to
got
be
you.
Cliff first option. He's the
I'm
big
a
guy.
Rui.
Ugo's what they call him. He's the big guy from Kentucky.
Gotcha.
Very athletic, very long, rim protector, 3 or 4 points a
Ugana
game.
Kingsley. Yeah.
Yes, they call him Ugo or Ugo.
Ugo
And
Ugo Kingsley.
there's been
Yeah.
some buzz there that he'd be an option for Alabama. I think it's after Cliff. I think Cliff, would be the top priority. But there's a lot going on with Cliff. He's taken a couple of visits. He's been to Kansas State. He's been to Georgetown. North Carolina's lurking out there for a visit. Baylor. Ideally, you'd want to wrap that big guy up. But if you don't, I mean, I think the one thing we know is Nate's going to have options after last year. I mean, I looked it up. It was late June, almost July when Quinterly left, and he was the only true point guard on the roster. And I don't think Nate's ever going to let that happen again. And the same for a big guy. I mean, even, you assume you get Grant back. We feel like that's a good possibility. And you have Aiden Sherrill, who I'm not sure anybody is aware he exists. Like literally, we've spent a whole season.
The most under the radar McDonald's
It's
All-American
it's
perhaps in the
amazing
history
because
of Alabama basketball. Got to be.
there was a
Yeah.
whole year of Bama needs a big next year's class, and I'm like, the dude's been committed for months. So, but they'd have a 6'11" guy, long arms, can block some shots. So, still trying to add one more. Again, we've discussed this. I mean, it could be the number one roster in the country. It could be
All right,
the number
Jimmy.
one.
I'm going to put Jimmy on the spot. You can only solidify one of these two potential returnees. Which one are you taking? Mark Sears or Grant Nelson?
It's really tough because, basketball, it's a lot like football. I mean, the big guys are the hardest ones to find. The big, tall, lengthy guys are recruiting gold. There's a lot of talented guards out there. There's so few talented big guys, but Mark Sears is just in a different stratosphere. I'm going to say Sears, even though my expectation is like Tim is Alabama more likely to get Grant Nelson back than Mark Sears, although I think both could happen for sure. But Sears, what would be so cool, guys, about Sears coming back is you have great players and then you have legendary players. I think Sears played himself into legendary status, and him returning as a legend. It's so rare for fans and for all of us to watch a guy play for your team having already secured legendary status. Sometimes that's bestowed on players after they're done and after they leave. But Mark Sears would literally be a legend of Alabama basketball with probably a jersey that's going to hang in the rafters one day, even soon. So I'm going to say Sears as being an exception to the rule being recruit the bigs first because they're harder to find.
Yeah, I think that with Nelson, you're talking about a guy who damn sure had a couple of Daniel Moore games in the NCAA tournament. The North Carolina game was his Daniel Moore game. But with Sears, you're right. I mean, it's not that hard to envision some type of honoring like a jersey in the rafters or something of that. And it's a scenario Alabama fans still right now are hoping ends with both back in crimson for the upcoming season. One more thing, Tim, before we let Jimmy out of here. I wanted to ask this during the draft segment, so I got to circle back. Hey, never too early to think about 2025s, right? For the next draft. If I asked you to pick Alabama's surefire first rounder, just one for the 2025 NFL draft, which way you going, Tim?
I mean, I want to say Jalen, right? You're
Quarterback
either first,
value.
you're either
Yeah.
first or a fifth. So I would say Jalen's more of a first than a fifth, but I'm going with Jeremy Bernard. I think wide
Ooh.
receiver, everything I've heard, the little bit we've seen, I mean, what we saw at Washington, what we saw in the spring game, from people I've talked to, they talk like out of that foursome. And I think the injured guy went 90, somewhere around there. They had Polk went 37, then Rome went 10. They're telling me that he's not far. He's more Rome than Polk. People that have been around him. So that would be more of a top 10 pick. So even if he's in the ballpark of Rome, I mean, we're looking at a first round pick opportunity this year to be the wide receiver one also at Alabama, knows the system and all that stuff. So I'll go with Jeremy.
What about you, Jimmy?
Germ.
I love Tim's pick. That's exciting and that's fun. And of course, Jalen, that it would mean so much for Jalen to be drafted in the first round first of all, would mean that the Alabama's team is probably going to be pretty good this fall. But I'm going to go safe conservative here and say Tyler Booker, even though it's not really a safe pick to say an offensive guard would go in the first round, because guards are traditionally sort of second citizens in the NFL draft. But Chance Warmack was drafted really highly out of Alabama as a guard. I think Booker is a longer, he's a longer than Warmack. I think he's more built, more looks like, hey, this is a guy that looks like an NFL football player. He's going to knock the interviews out of the park. And while I realize projecting a guard in the first round is sort of foolhardy, I just think he's the best NFL prospect in that class on this team. So I'll go with Tyler Booker.
Yeah, it's a different sort of scenario because it's almost like every year we've been able to count on an Alabama offensive tackle coming out to go in the first round. We could always that or an edge, right? I mean, the last few years especially. But you're probably not looking at that for 2025. I tend to lean more towards Jalen right now anyway, because of what we talked about, positional value. I mean, if Bo Nix went top 12, God bless him too. Good for him. It's not all that difficult to envision Jalen having a year that's commensurate to that and perhaps leads to a similar type of selection. Well, Jimmy, as always, man, we appreciate the time. Appreciate your great work for us there at BamaOnLine.com. Look forward to seeing you again real soon over there on the roundtable.
See y'all next week.
See you, man.
There he goes, Jimmy Stein, team expert for us there at BOL. Hey, we want to remind you real quick as we bring on Andrew Bone, our senior recruiting editor at BOL. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, we certainly hope you'll do that. Hit the subscribe button right now. Hit a like for us if you don't mind. Turn on those notifications. You'll get all of our YouTube content as it drops right here on the YouTube home for BOL. And with that, there he is, Andrew Bone on a Monday morning. Andrew, how we doing?
We good. How you guys doing?
We're here, man. We're doing well. No case of the Mondays here. And boy, no shortage of topics on the recruiting front, guys. And Andrew, we'll start with you. Some interesting stuff as it relates to the 2025 quarterback outlook, as we've talked about on some previous shows here. And that seems to have taken another formal type of step in that regard.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for the last few weeks, that Alabama was going to go out. They were going to evaluate kids. There was a lot of quarterbacks that they've had interest in. They've been communicating with. They wanted to go out and see once the spring evaluation period got underway. And we saw offense coordinator Nick Sheridan hit up several schools last week, including Duncanville High School in Texas, to see Keelan Russell, one of the top dual threat quarterbacks in the entire country. And I think he's number 8 quarterback per On 3 Sports. He's in the top 100. He's been committed to SMU for a while, but other schools are showing a lot of interest, extending offers, and he's starting to take visits. Alabama extended him an offer on Wednesday. This offer came from Coach Sheridan, but we do believe this is one that is a committable one, and one that Alabama's going to pursue, and they're going to bring in for a visit. I think he's currently set for an official in late May, and we'll just kind of see where things go from there. Now, the thing about quarterbacks is there hadn't been a lot of offers. I think there was 3 total offers in the 2025 class, and a lot of those offers came when Coach DeBoer and his staff first arrived at Alabama. We hadn't seen a new quarterback offer in a few months, and now Keelan Russell adds an offer from Alabama. But there's other schools that are involved. He took a visit to Ole Miss this past weekend. We've heard Oregon's a real player there, but a visit to Alabama could certainly change some things in his recruitment. So certainly one to watch moving forward.
And Tim, obviously the quarterback news is always big, but Alabama is still active in the transfer portal, where some possibilities on the defensive side of the ball, primarily right now anyway, seem to exist. Edward Woods in town on an official visit over the weekend. Give us an update there. And then, Andrew, I'll come to you about Khalil Jacobs and maybe where things sit with the South Alabama transfer. But Tim, first, let's talk about Woods.
Yeah, Andrew's had pretty good updates with him. Became a Bama target pretty early on. We felt like Bama had a good shot. I mean, he hit the portal, and Alabama was the first one mentioned to us. I think he's going to take a visit. Andrew can update you on what he said. Another one to watch is Cam Howard. He's a guy that we posted on the roundtable last week. Went in as a Charlotte freshman, I believe. He played last year. Didn't have a lot of video. What I saw was a guy that could come in. You know, when we talked about the portal, we talked about offensive line, we talked about secondary. That's kind of what they wanted to need. Now, there was a lot of hype. I think the hype of what was going to be available in the portals really dampened most fans as to what is available, because they were expecting everybody's All-American in there, right? They were expected every other school's All-American in the portal, but they were going to keep all their guys, right? So we had Alabama had their choice of All-Americans all over the country, and it just didn't play out that way. So what they were going to do is guys that could compete, add depth. Cam Howard would fit that bill. 6 foot safety, probably has a little bit of multi-position ability, play that star and some of that. He's not a corner, but he could play some of that multi-position, has experience. I think Ed Wood falls in that category too. The biggest disappointment about Edward Woods is that no one remembers the movie Ed Wood starring Johnny Depp. And every time I make the joke, nobody laughs. Travis got it.
I get you. I'm with you. We don't
It's a
have
good
to
movie.
remember it. You do that for us, Tim. You handle that.
I'm
Exemplary.
going to the movie reference if I get a chance. But both guys that Alabama's looking at.
What about Khalil Jacobs? Andrew, it sounds like he's got a little bit of a busy week on tap here.
Yeah, South Alabama linebacker. You know, this is a kid that we were talking about back in January. Entered the portal for, I don't know if it was more than 24 hours. It was maybe less than 24 hours, but he was in and out pretty quick. And, you know, even back then, we knew that Alabama had interest. Kane Womack, the defense coordinator coming from South Alabama as the head coach, we knew that there was probably, you know, there was a really good player there. There was probably going to be one that might emerge as a transfer target. And Khalil Jacobs, you know, one of their overall best players last season, 56 tackles, I think 8.5 tackles for loss. Very active around the football. You know, recruited by Alabama, you know, for the stinger linebacker position. And yeah, this is a kid that, you know, on Friday we felt like maybe it was just going to go Alabama and done deal, but he's going to open it up. He's going to take some visits. Alabama is going to be the last visit this weekend, but he's going to visit Auburn on Tuesday. He's going to go up to Mizzou on Thursday, and then finish it off with a trip to Alabama. But I think as long as you know, we see Alabama make a big push there, I think there's a good chance that we see Khalil Jacobs in the class. But got to watch, see how those visits to the other schools have, you know, go this week, because anything can happen.
There you go, Tim. WDM checking in. Ed Wood did Bella Lugosi dirty. So there you go. Whatever.
That's a good movie.
Yeah, that
WDM, I'm
resonates.
with you.
That
That's a fun
resonates.
movie.
Andrew JT83 here in the comments on the YouTube stream. He's asking, does Woods have an actual Alabama offer? Now, I think on your reporting, that's what you're getting from it, right?
Yeah, Tim was able to confirm that yesterday, and you know, we were able to talk to Woods as well, and he also confirmed it. And you know, he is on a visit to Mississippi State, Michigan State today. He flew up there yesterday. It was kind of already pre-arranged. He was flying from Birmingham to Detroit, so he was going to go visit Spartans today. Then said he's going to make a decision shortly after. But yeah, he received an offer during the visit. He kind of got in late on Friday night, so he didn't really get a chance to spend a lot of time with the coaching staff. Then on Saturday, Coach DeBoer, as people probably saw, was at Mullet Toss at the Yay Alabama event. So they didn't get a chance to meet until Saturday night. So they finally had a chance to sit down, talk, have dinner, you know, enjoy some company. And, you know, the offer ended up being extended. We thought that there might be a chance that he would commit before the weekend was over, but he kept that Michigan State visit, you know, like we said, prearranged. So we'll see probably in the next 24 hours what he wants to do.
And Tim, I know we've been tracking Dawson Merritt, the Wolf target for the Crimson Tide on the defensive side of the ball. And also, I guess, Justin Hill, a top 100 edge from Ohio that is squarely in the mix. Looks like he's going to be taking an official visit in June. This, according to Andrew's outstanding 5 things to know, the very latest on the Alabama recruiting front. You're going to find that at BamaOnLine.com right now. So what do we know about those particular situations? I know we've been a little bit on commitment watch with Dawson Merritt.
Yeah, I think Dawson's pretty close. We know he had a good visit to Tuscaloosa. I want to take one more visit. Nebraska, is that right, Andrew?
Yep.
And if you leave the SEC, me and Andrew, we're just guessing at what school you left. If you leave the South, we're just guessing Michigan State, Nebraska. So taking that visit,
MSU.
yeah, it certainly felt escalated after his visit to Tuscaloosa. Again, he's a linebacker, but he's the wolf position. I think a few people have struggled. That's a different position than the inside backers, but he is a guy. I mean, it's a top 100 player, comes from an NFL pedigree. His tape, some of the best tape I've seen, and that's certainly not has nothing to do with Justin Hill, who's to me every bit. I mean, that's literally like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. They're both excellent prospects, and saw some camp footage this week. Justin just ran slap over an offensive lineman. I mean, like ran him over like a truck over a bike. So I think Alabama's battling there for Hill. I know his mom's a Bama fan, and then with Dawson, I think they've did a really good job up to this point.
What about some flip targets for us, Andrew? We always enjoy going there. Not so much when it's Alabama commitments that are being targeted to flip, but guys elsewhere committed that the Crimson Tide's still heavily involved with.
Well, I mentioned a couple guys on. I'll mention two guys on offense. Tim might want to take some defensive guys. He might not know any defensive guys.
But I don't do defense. I'm like Jalen DeBoer. I'm just about the offense, baby.
He's all about selling tickets.
Keelan Russell obviously is a guy that it's all quarterbacks. They're all quarterbacks. It seems like every single quarterback's committed somewhere. So those are kind of the main targets you're going after. But one other offensive target I'll mention is A.K. Deer, committed to Ole Miss. Robert Gillespie went out and saw him last week. I believe that was on Tuesday, and we've talked a little bit about him. Alabama would love to get Deer back on campus for an official visit this summer. They were in that top 2, top 3 with Deer before he made that decision. Alabama does have one running back commitment right now in Anthony Rogers, but they'd love to get another one. And Deer is a kind of a bigger back and somebody that they're certainly targeting, and they're going to continue to push for until he says his recruitment's completely shut down.
Tim, a lot of talk always about wide receivers, even on the heels of landing Orion Williams, who did reclassify, I guess, from 2025 to 2024. And then you think about, okay, now where does the Crimson Tide head at that position? Because Jamie French was a one-time commitment under the previous coaching staff. He has since apparently moved on. Perhaps there's still some connection there. But just wide receiver in general right now, who are a couple of the guys that you think have Alabama's undivided attention, understanding they've already made an impact at that spot with a commitment or two?
Yeah, let's hear Brooks. I mean, I think he's going to be about as good as any commitment you can get in this class. But if it's not a freak, if you're not talking about a 6'4" wide receiver with a 40-inch vertical jump, Lazier Brooks going to be as good as any of those 6 foot and below range wide receivers. One thing I know for sure is that Shep, the wide receiver coach, has been very thorough, and he's very picky. He's not a guy to take. He's looking for a lot of things. I hear route tree a lot, catch radius, all the good stuff that he's looking for. He's going to be extremely picky. So they're going to be able to get their wide receivers this year. I don't think they have many concerns about that. Like you said, Ryan Williams kind of part of this class. Obviously, he'll be on the team next year and impacting it. But you'll obviously have between him and Brooks, you'll have some young guys there. Caleb Cunningham's a guy I know they're involved with, 5-star type wide receiver pushing there. With Jamie French, the funny thing is, there's been Bama hasn't really pursued him heavily, and he hasn't shown much interest in Bama. That kind of just went away when he committed. Now, I will say the fact he committed on the drop of a hat makes me think that was kind of always on the table for him, just never really a factor. But they've got plenty of guys. Marcus Harris is one we're watching, and there's a couple of guys, I'm not going to name their names, but they would commit to Alabama right now if they had the green light. So they're being selective. They want to get that position right. Look, I heard some of my buddies, friends, Bama fans, when I said their wide receiver group was so good last year. I'm not sure who could have got in the starting rotation at Washington. I mean, Jeremy Bernard was like the fourth option, and we think
Yeah.
he might be
No,
wide
just look at the
receiver one.
draft here. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That you got Jeremy who might be wide receiver one. Now, obviously, a guy like Burton or somebody is going to find receptions. He's just too good. He's going to get open. But that's how good they are. They got that way by being picky. So I think they're going to be very selective to get the guys they want.
Yeah, what we saw kind of early on when the staff first arrived at the wide receiver position is we saw a lot of offers that got extended at receiver. A lot of offers, so everybody thought, oh, they're going after 50 guys. You know, a lot of it was trying to get kids on campus to meet with them, to speak with them, to evaluate them a little bit, see where their mind was. And they had a lot of those guys on campus throughout the entire spring. And I think they really started to narrow it down to a select group when we started seeing official visitors that set up summer trips. Of all the 20 plus wide receivers that visited during the spring, there's only about 4 or 5 guys who have set official visits, and that's Alabama. Those are the guys that they want to get on campus for officials this summer. One other guy that I'll mention is Derek Meadows. This is a kid that Alabama's always had the previous staff could never break Vegas. They could never get into Vegas for some reason. And I don't know why, but they just never could get a player out of there. Not like they were recruiting it heavily, but there was always a player or
Bishop
two.
Gorman always has players, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
a hotbed. So they were able to get kids on campus, but for some reason, never a Vegas commitment. So Derek Meadows has Alabama kind of on that short list right now. Notre Dame's been viewed as the favorite, but he had a great trip to Alabama last month, and they're going to get the final official visit for Derek Meadows on June the 21st. So that's going to be a big visit. That's certainly going to be one we're going to watch, and we know that Alabama, really likes Derek. He's a big kid too, not normal kids that Alabama's recruited. 6'5", about 200 pounds. So that would be a big offensive weapon if Alabama was able to get him.
Tim JT83 here in the comments. Would you guys say the next 2 months, he asks, are the heavy portion of official visits? Feels like May, June have become critical since the December signing period was instituted. More of the same on that front, Tim, and Andrew, you can chime in too.
Yeah, I think June's especially going to be busy because you're going to have like that second, I don't know if it's a second or third wave with a new staff, but you've got that new wave of offers going out based on what they've seen in spring practice. And that's a huge deal because that's the second best thing you've got as to seeing them in camp. You want to see them live in a game. You want to see them in their live setting. You want to see them at camp. So I think you're going to see more offers coming out, but a lot's going to depend on those camps. And I think June will be busy for some reason. And this got nothing to do with JT83, but there's like a feeling that Bama is struggling in recruiting, and I can't understand where the hell it comes from when it's the number 6 ranked class in the nation. It has 10 commitments, which is the least of the 6. It's the least. It's got the least amount of the 6. And when you look at like Notre Dame, who's ahead of them, they have 20. So, I mean, it's not a bad recruiting class by any means. It's got talent. I would say they're ahead of the curve. The one thing I also think you have to look at is their evaluations. And again, a lot of people, and I'm on an old man tangent, but I'm an old man. This is what we do. We earned the right to be here. Is that the rankings aren't final. I don't care what his star ranking is in February. We have the best in the business in Charles Power. I've known him going on 15 years now, and he's going to do his job. He's going to give a fair ranking. He's going to evaluate these guys. He's going to make moves, but it's still an ongoing process. You know how I know? Because it's that way for the Alabama staff. They're ongoing, their process. Rankings and evaluations are the same thing. Bama are finding guys to offer, get into camp offers, guys to push for, guys they want. So there's a whole lot of recruiting left. And I think the staff, I'm a big fan of what they've done. I think that where they sit right now, they're a good position. It might be a different discussion in August or November because we're just dating. Nobody's getting married yet. We're getting married in December. We're just holding hands right now. This is going to be a lot of twists and turns.
I got to get a sponsor for Tim's Yell at the Sky segments. I think that those would sell extremely well. Hey, Andrew, so we talk about the evaluation process and how that's ongoing. That sort of coincides with the staff being out on the road, right? Give us an idea of exactly what that's entailed to this point and what might be on the horizon here.
Yeah, I mean, spring evaluation period. Get out, go see a lot of these kids. You got a lot of guys that have been to your campus before. At least during the spring, maybe for junior day, you get out, go see them. Put the helmet and pads on. A lot of kids are starting this week. So coaches were on the road last week. A lot of those were just kind of school visits, going to see as many kids as they possibly can. And a lot of those guys were, I would say, underclassmen, 2026, even some 2027 stops. Go ahead and start, inviting those kids to, campus, get them to camp this summer. But I think this week and next week, week after, that's when you're really going to see coaches out seeing their top end guys, because those guys are finally out on the practice field, and you want to see them work out. You've been promising them, hey, I'm going to come out and see you this spring, and coaches are going to be all over the country this week. We're going to have it all on BamaOnLine.com. I already talked to one kid, top 100, top 50 wide receiver, Travis Smith out of Atlanta. I said, Coach Shep, I'll be by to see him this week. A lot of other guys are expecting Alabama in, so be sure to stay on the BOL Roundtable, because that's where we update it every single day as far as coaching stops.
Tim, what are you looking ahead to the most right now? Are you on a commitment watch for us? A little bit of everything. Still got portal stuff you can combine with that. Where are we at?
I think the portal with the May 1 deadline approaching, um, I think that's something to watch because a lot of these kids, if you're smart, you hit the portal, you kind of know where you want to go, right? So you got guys hitting the portal. We hear us talking about the South Alabama guy Khalil's going to take visits, but Andrew's guy Ed Woods is going to have a decision here probably this week. Cam Howard's a guy that probably had a destination in mind. We like where Alabama sits there. So I think this week's more about the portal and probably basketball, right? Portal for basketball and football. I think everybody's keeping their eyes on Cliff and those guys visiting, plus the Bama guys, and seeing what else happens in these final 48 hours as far as the portal goes, who enters. I mean, they still got a couple of days, and don't forget, reminder, they've got till the 1st to declare, so the midnight 12:01, and then the universities have 48 hours, I believe, to put them in the portal. So on May 3rd, we'll know exactly where everything sits.
What about you, Andrew? Where are you kind of in the same headspace as Tim? I don't know if I worded that correctly there. I don't,
You don't want to be there.
I don't know if I want to do that to you,
I
Andrew.
don't know if I can live in Tim's head, but it's pretty wild.
That's like that scene in that get him to the Greek. I got a dirty mind. I hope you're wearing a condom.
Hey,
One of the best lines in the whole movie.
no Diddy. No Diddy.
Rotten Tomatoes with Tim
Diddy's
Watts.
actually in it. Diddy's actually the one that said it.
So yeah, obviously, this is going to be another week as far as portal watch. Kids making decisions, kids coming on campus. As Tim mentioned, Cam Howard, another kid that we're starting to watch very closely here. Micah DeBose, top 100 in-state offensive lineman, expected to be back in Tuscaloosa for an unofficial visit this weekend. So things are pretty active. Like as we mentioned, coaches are out on the road evaluating. We're going to see a lot of new offers that are probably going to get extended. Maybe one's committable, maybe a couple of them are committable, but most of them are, hey, we like you. We want to see you in camp this summer. So you see a lot of offers go out there this week, and coaches be out on the road.
As it happens, we're going to have it for you right there at BamaOnLine.com, the roundtable, our premium message board. That's where you need to post up with us. And of course, right here on the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that right now. Turn on those notifications. You'll get all of our YouTube content as it drops. Hit us with a like if you don't mind. We would greatly appreciate that too. Tim, Andrew, always great stuff. Of course, we thank Jimmy Stein as well. Another Monday show in the books. Look forward to doing it again in 7 days.
Absolutely. We'll be here. Joseph, y'all's thoughts with Joseph, who our young fella had to go to urgent care. I think he had food poisoning.
Ooh. Hang in there, JoJo. We'll have him back soon enough, and we'll be able to get that quad box fired back up that we like.
We should have that Friday, right? This weekend.
Yeah. Assuming
heading into the weekend.
He's off the injured reserve, the
He should be
DL. We
okay.
can
I
get
don't
him
know if
back.
he's ever had
He's a
food
young
poisoning,
guy.
but the first time you had food poisoning, you think you're dying. I'm not sure every time you have it, you don't think you're dying.
You don't forget it.
I know
That's for
Andrew
sure.
thinks he's dying because he texts me he's dying repeatedly.
Oh no.
Andrew texts me he's dying so long I start rooting for it. Like, shoot, I'm hoping
Oh,
this is true. She'll quit texting me.
hey,
Oh.
I had one the week before my wedding, and I thought it was God telling me you shouldn't get married.
Oh.
Look, if you go to New Orleans,
Divine
that's not
intervention.
what Audrey could see this, genius. That's not the move you want to make. If you go to New Orleans a lot and you eat raw oysters, you're gonna grab hold of a stomach bug
Another
for
reason why
24
your boy
hours.
doesn't eat oysters right here.
But
Yeah.
Oh,
if
Good on
you
those.
if you did it enough, you kind of understand to outlast it and keep drinking water. And when it breaks, you'll be okay. Get
Yeah.
some bread, some grits, some chicken broth
You got
to
to be
settle you down.
coached through that. You got to have a coach to get you
I'm
through
kind
that
of
type.
I'm kind of like my own coach. I'm like Bill Russell after he retired. I'm a player coach on that one. My
Mhm.
wife will sleep right
Mhm.
through it. I don't need
Mhm.
her rubbing my hair either.
Yeah.
I just
I
want to
hear
be
you.
I just want to be left alone when
You don't need
I'm
a cold rag on your forehead or anything like that.
you
Yeah.
don't have to hold my hair back.
All
let's not
right.
let's not kid
Well,
ourselves. We know
we
we
can
know
we can
stuff your
see you
hair.
don't have to do that. I mean, hey, as always, Tim, Andrew, thanks a lot, guys. We'll catch up again real soon.
Awesome. See you guys. Thanks for
There they
watching.
go. Tim Watts, Andrew Bone, and also for Jimmy Stein. Thanking you once again for joining us. Until next time, so long, everybody.